Welcome to the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center Sunday morning program. I wanted to let everyone know that this program is being recorded. Before we begin, we will have a devotional program and then continue with the presentation. Please know that today we will have selected readers who will recite the prayers. And now we will begin with the devotion.
All praise be to God, who from every drop of blood shed by his chosen ones, hath sought forth of us creation, whose number none but himself can reckon. He hath raised them to be the embodiments of his love and the manifestations of his tender affection. It is they who are the hands of his cause amongst men. It is they who have rendered aid unto God in every age, and have arisen to promote that which he hath purposed in such wise that the majesty of the kings and the dreadful might have failed to affright them, nor have they been hindered from following the path of his truth by the clash of arms and the furious clamor of battalions. They have raised their triumphal cry amidst all that dwell in the heavens and on the earth, summoning everyone unto the Lord of all mankind. He who is the ruler of this world and of the next, the God of the throne on high and of earth below. Baha'u'llah.
Sherlyn, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're muted.
My apologies, friends. He is God, blessed and exalted is He. All praise unto the Almighty, the Sanctified. Glorified be His power, who hath ordained that the tyranny of the unjust and the violence of the oppressors should become the means whereby the true lovers draw nigh unto the glorious habitation of the best beloved, and the sincere among His servants attain the paradise of communion with Him who is the desire of all men, and that sufferings and tribulations should serve as the instrument whereby His word of command is spread abroad, and the standards of His praise are unfurled in all regions. How great is His transcendent power! How immensely exalted His all embracing will! Inasmuch as He produceth light from fire and joy from sorrow. They that are sunk in heedlessness fondly imagine that massacre and crucifixion cause the fire of the Word of God to be extinguished, and regard martyrdom as a devastating injury. They are utterly oblivious of the truth that through such afflictions the cause of God is exalted, its fame is blazoned far and wide, and the martyrs themselves are enabled to attain the boundless retreats of nearness unto God. Immeasurably exalted is the Lord of wisdom, who doeth that which He willeth, and ordaineth whatsoever He pleaseth.
It is the shedding of the sacred blood of the martyrs in Persia, which in the shining era, this resplendent, this gem-studded Baha'i age, shall change the face of the earth into high heaven, and as revealed in the tablets, raise up the tabernacle of the oneness of mankind in the very heart of the world, reveal to men's eyes the reality of the unity of the human race, establish the most great peace, make of this lower realm a mirror for the Baha'i paradise, and establish beyond any doubt before all the peoples of the world the truth of the verse, the day when the earth shall be changed into another earth. Shoghi Effendi.
Thank you to our dear readers who are each champions of justice in their own right. We thank Ismail, Sherilyn, and Arman for honoring the memory of these beloved martyrs who sacrificed their lives. And thank you to dear Mona Mahmoudi herself, who prepared the readings for this presentation. Friends, 39 years ago, 8 men and women who served on the governing body of the Baha'i faith in Iran, referred to as the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Iran, as well as 7 members of the local Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Tehran, were executed by the Iranian government. A year earlier, members of the previously elected National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of that country were also kidnapped and executed. In commemorating the 39-year anniversary of their martyrdom, we are immensely fortunate to have with us Mrs. Mona Mahmoudi, whose beloved parents served in 2 of the aforementioned institutions of the Baha'i faith and paid the ultimate price. She will speak to us about their great sacrifice and about the concept of sacrifice itself through the lens of truth and justice. Ms. Mona Mahmoudi holds advanced degrees in mathematics and is an IT executive, a cybersecurity consultant, and also lectures on the subject of mathematics. She is a mother and a beloved grandmother to 3 dear grandchildren whom she adores. To many who know her, she is loved and distinguished for her selfless dedication to the most vulnerable among us, offering her time and capacity to be an agent of change for the betterment of humanity. Welcome, dear Mona. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the committee for inviting me. Before I start, though, what I like to say is that even though what I'm going to be sharing with you is some personal vignettes and some personal stories, yet it is not, it is really belongs to the Baha'i world. It is not a, even though it's personal, and yet it is really part of the Baha'i history, just very much like the Dawnbreakers. Their stories belong to the entire Baha'i world, nay, the entire world. And so, with that, I like to start. My presentation is going to be pretty short, and then I do do not mind if people jump in and ask questions, and maybe we can open it up later on for questions and answers, and as your committee sees fit. To give you a bit of a context for my presentation, I like to introduce myself and basically tell you a bit about my family life. I was born and raised in Iran. Uh, I was born and raised in Iran, and in a Baha'i family. I have a brother and a sister, and so about 1970, my parents sent my sister and I out of Iran to come to the United States to study. And we were supposed to get our degrees and go back to Iran and serve the country at that time, which of course didn't really pan out the way it was, at that time imagined. I came to United States and I was in the middle of my studies, and really the best years of my life, enjoying going to school, learning, and just being a student. When the revolution in Iran took place, at the time I was working on my doctoral degree in mathematics at UCLA when the revolution happened. And of course, we knew, and I was very well aware what it would mean for the Baha'i community, and of course, specifically for my own family, because we were expecting it. And I think everybody on this call, in this Zoom meeting, is familiar with the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran, and that has been going on for over 170 years. And we knew that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not going to be treating the Baha'is fairly and with justice. So what happened at that time is that my father, Mr. Hushang Mahmoudi, was a member of the National Assembly of Iran. We call it the First National Assembly because uh, they were the assembly that was in existence when the revolution happened. So just to distinguish the number of assemblies and give it some basically time in terms of what happened to each one, we call that the First National Assembly. And so my father, Hushang Mahmoudi, was by training, he was a lawyer, but he really didn't really get a chance to, or didn't really want to practice his law until later years in his life. But basically, he was an educator and very popular and beloved television personality, especially with children and young people. He was also an author and a poet and documentary filmmaker. He was very well known within the Baha'i community and without the Baha'i community and outside of the Baha'i community. He was a very passionate speaker, especially his love for Abdul Baha was well known throughout Iran. And he served on different institutions of the Baha'i faith. And finally, you know, on 21st August of 1980, when he was in a meeting along with 8 other members of the National Assembly, plus 2 auxiliary board members, we can talk about that a little bit more. They were abducted and they just basically simply disappeared. And all the efforts on part of the Baha'i community, Baha'i administration in Iran, basically went to nothing. And so never heard anything from them back. And of course, those years, there were lots and lots of horrible rumors. And we were asked not to believe any of those, but we don't know what happened to them. But one thing is sure, that they were executed, they gave up their lives. And a good reasoning for that is that the Iranian government was desperately looking for prominent Baha'is to recant their faith so that they could actually show them off. And if any of them had recanted their faith or was, not 100% with it, they would have shown it, obviously. They would have advertised it. So that was in 1980. And last year, last year was basically the 40th anniversary of the execution or disappearance of the members of what we call the First National Assembly. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures a little bit later on, and just to clarify things a bit. Subsequent to the disappearance of the First National Assembly, my mother, Jinus Mahmoudi, was elected to the Second National Assembly. And she was, again, she was pretty well known, prominent both inside of the Baha'i community and outside. She was a prominent scientist in atmospheric sciences. And she basically, her last title in the Iranian government was Undersecretary of War. Of course, war means defense. And it was a civilian position, which was the highest non-political position that a woman held in Iran. So she, along with 7 members of the Second National Assembly, they were arrested on 13th of December, 1981, which was approximately 16 months after the disappearance of the First National Assembly. And after being in prison for 2 weeks, they were executed on December 27th of 1981. Within a week of that, which was exactly 7 days later, on January 4th, 1981, the 6 members of the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Tehran were executed. Among them was a cousin of mine, Shiva Mahmoudi Astolazadeh. She was 36 years old. And so before the execution and imprisonment, of course, we were communicating with my parents, especially with my mom. And so that really basically 1, 2, 3, my father, my mother, and then of course the cousin. And if you talk to Baha'is of Iran, people who have come from Iran, I'm sure all of them have a family member or a acquaintance that were executed because of their faith in Iran. Obviously, what happened naturally after these executions, the Baha'i world started publicizing the plight of the Iranian Baha'is, in the hope that their situation would improve. And I remember in the 1980s, I was very much occupied with, whenever the opportunity arose to talk about the sacrifices of the Baha'is of Iran and talk about the persecution of the Baha'is of Iran. And so many occasions to share the stories on local and national radio, TV, and print. In 1982, a congressional hearing took place in Washington, D.C. on the persecution of Baha'is in Iran. And I represented basically the Baha'is of Iran, and I spoke as an eyewitness. There were 3 members of the National Assembly of the United States along with me. And so I like to actually read something from the proceedings of that, the congressional hearing in 1982, because for those who are familiar with the persecution of Baha'is and those who are not, both equally, it basically captures the essence of what happened at that time. So this is from the opening statement of Honorable Don Bunker, May 25th, 1982. And he talks about, why they were holding this hearing. And he says, I'm just going to read you a couple of sentences from it. He says that the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which recognizes and protects the Jewish, Christian, and Zoroastrian minorities in that country, nevertheless denies recognition to Iran's largest religious minority, the Baha'is. As a result, Iran's 300,000 Baha'is are deprived of any form of protection under the law. Of course, that at that time was 300,000. I'm pretty sure it's a lot more right now. From the time of its birth in 1844, and at no stage in its history, has the Baha'i faith been granted recognition as an independent religion by the Iranian government or under the Iranian constitution. The Baha'is have been considered heretics within Islam since the religion was founded about 170 years ago in Iran. Since the inception of the Baha'i faith, they have lived in a climate of constant repression, characterized by frequent outbreaks of violence and bloodshed. In the early days, over 20,000 Baha'is were killed. Under subsequent regimes, including the former Shah, the religious persecution of the Baha'is continued. Now, once again, in post-revolutionary Iran, differences in religious ideology are being used by fanatical elements to justify violent attacks on the Baha'i community. In March of 1980, 2 Baha'is were executed for teaching the Baha'i faith. 14 more were executed in June of 1980 for practicing their religion. In August of the same year, 14 members of the Baha'i administrative body disappeared. Last December, This was December 27th of 1981. 8 members of the Baha'i National Assembly were executed, and in January of 1982, 6 members of the local governing body of Tehran were executed. Baha'i shrines and cemeteries have been desecrated. Administrative centers, desecrated. Administrative centers and savings confiscated. A systematic effort appears underway to eliminate the Baha'i religion from Iran. And then he goes on saying the Baha'is are gentle and peace-loving. In accordance with the tenets of their faith, they uphold the divine origin of all the major world religions rather than being narrow in scope. And then he continues. So this gives a bit of a context to my very, very short presentation. As the Honorable Don Bunkers mentioned in this opening statement in this congressional hearing, at that time, he referred to the abduction, disappearance of the 14 members of national administrative order, administration in Iran, and the execution of 8 members and the local assembly. And in all those 3, actually, they all had something to do. I mean, I had something to do with members of all of those 3 institutions. And subsequent to that, of course, after 1982, we have the total local spiritual assemblies of different major cities in Iran that were captured, imprisoned, and a lot of times tortured and then executed. The local assemblies included local assembly of Hamadan, of Tabriz, of Yazd, of course, and of Tehran. So I like to actually show you some pictures. I'm going to share my screen, and I hope it's okay. Okay, so this is a very historical picture taken probably around maybe March, April, May, June, July of 1980, a couple of months before the abduction of the National Assembly of Iran, the first National Assembly of Iran. What you are seeing in this picture, which I think is very, very historic, is members of the first National Assembly of Iran, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, who were abducted. And this is a joint meeting of the first National Assembly of Iran with the local assembly of Iran. And my mother, Jinus, who was representing the institution of counselors. And just for your information, because of these special circumstances in Iran at that time, the Universal House of Justice had permitted and that always 1 or 2 members of the auxiliary board and the counselors, and/or counselors, would be meeting, would be present in each meeting of the National Assembly of Iran. And what you're observing here is a joint meeting of the National Assembly of Iran, First National Assembly. And
Mona, I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you so much for sharing this photo. There are some questions from the audience already. They're asking, first of all, they asked if you could share how they might find the statement you read from.
Yes, okay, so the statement was, of course, it's in the congressional records, but if you recall World Order magazine, let me, well, I can share that actually with you after I stop sharing my screen. Is that okay?
Of course, thank you. And also they're asking if possible, I know that you mentioned this is a photo of the National Spiritual Assembly, the first one that was mentioned, National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Iran. And they're meeting here with the local Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Tehran. Perhaps if the friends want to know, because they are asking if you could mention their names when you point to them.
Okay, I'm gonna try my best. Okay, so let me. Share with you another picture. Okay. Okay, let me share with you.
And if there isn't time for that now, we can wait until the question and answer section.
Right. Trying to figure out. Okay, so let me. Okay, so yes. Okay, so let me start. Folks, I know my father. So this is Hushang Mahmoudi. This is Mr. Taslimi. This is Dr. Hossein Naji, who was a chairperson of the National Assembly. This is Manuher Qaim Maghami, who was, I think he was the secretary of the National Assembly. I'm not sure. This is Mr. Ataullah Tim Mogharabi, Kambi Sadegh Zadeh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is Mrs. Bahia Naderi. And this gentleman is Mr. Ibrahim, I think Rahimi. I'm not sure about his last name. Please forgive me. And this is Mr. Yusuf Qadimi. So this picture, okay. So this is a picture of National Assembly of Iran. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And my mom was present as an auxiliary board member, representing actually the institution of the counselor with them. And the rest of the people in this picture at that time were members of the local assembly of Tehran. And after the abduction of the First National Assembly, these members became members of the Second National Assembly of Iran, except with the exception of Mr. Khosrow Mohandesi, I think here. We can, just a second, let me look at the chat. Yeah, Ibrahim Rahmani, yes. Please, friends, please do. If you can actually help me with the names of, yeah, Ibrahim Rahmani. This is the gentleman, Ibrahim Rahmani. I'm sorry, I could have and I should have probably prepared the names of these 11 members, but I didn't. So
no, it's no problem. I think people can also find these names online.
Yeah, actually, I can. This is, so they got together, and the only person in this picture who survived is our beloved Giti Vahid, who's sitting right here in the middle. And as it happens, she was spared when the Second National Assembly of Iran were arrested. And so of historical importance, of course, is also the fact that my mother was supposed to be meeting with the National Assembly of Iran when they were abducted. However, she happened not to be present in that particular session, so she was spared. So after the First National Assembly of Iran disappeared, my mom was the only one who basically knew about, was involved in the proceedings of the National Assembly, First National Assembly. And so she helped, transfer the torch to the next National Assembly. And the way, because of the special circumstances at that time, you may ask the question, how did the election of the Second National Assembly actually took place? Because right after, in fact, less than 24 hours after the abduction of these beloved friends, members of the First National Assembly, the Second National Assembly in Iran was basically, they hit the ground running, and they were in session, and they started the National Assembly. Basically, there was no interference in terms of leadership of the Baha'i community in Iran. And the reason for that is that, again, due to the special circumstances of that time, the last national convention in Iran, that was where the National Assembly was elected, the House of Justice had allowed them to basically choose the membership of the National Assembly the Second National Assembly, whatever, right after the first one. So the first the highest, the 9 highest votes, was the First National Assembly of Iran. Right after that, the other ones, in order of the number of votes that they were receiving, then they became the next National Assembly, because there was no time to hold another national convention, obviously. So that's the way. So the list was there. In fact, if you really think about it, there are so many beautiful and wonderful and historical points in all of this. Is that if your name was on that list, and if you were you accepted to serve on the national institution or the local institution, even, basically you were saying, hey, I am willing to give up my life, because you knew that that's going to happen. So this is a picture of course, the National Assembly of Iran. And let me show you another picture. Okay. Okay, let me stop share. Okay, let me give you another one. I had actually interesting pictures. I'm not sharing, which is good. Let me, okay. Okay. Okay, let me share this one. Okay, so this is the First National Assembly. Okay, okay, so this is the First National Assembly of Iran. And this is the group picture. This was taken at the exact same time as the other group picture. Okay. So let me share also a couple of pictures of my parents, because they were part of it. But before then, I'm going to share with you. Okay. So you can see this picture, right?
Yes.
This picture, okay, so this picture, there are other people who were not on the local assembly of Tehran, or they were not martyred. But this is my mother, Jinus Mahmoudi. This is Giti Vahid, who is the only member of the Second National Assembly that survived, and she actually lives in United States. This gentleman, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They were all killed. And I don't know the name of all of these people, but I know that, for example, this gentleman, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dana.
Up again, but I think that your mouse is not visible to the audience. So if you just say from the left, standing, seated.
If you allow me, okay, that's fine. I wasn't really prepared to really talk about every single person and I bring up their names. If you don't mind, I would stop actually pointing. Thank you very much. I wasn't aware that the mouse would not be sharing that, okay, showing it. So I'm just gonna tell you that this picture is basically has members of the local assembly of Tehran and the Second National Assembly of Tehran, of Iran, and a few others who were not martyred. And I'm gonna share with you one more picture, and then, okay. So this picture shows the road that is standing up, the lady right in the middle of it, with short hair. That is my cousin Shiva Mahmoudi, who was 36 years old. She was member of the LSA of Tehran, and she was executed. And I think on her both sides are members of local assembly of Tehran who were executed.
I'm truly sorry, Mona. Apparently, the full photo is not showing on the screen.
Yeah. Is it like it doesn't show at all, or it's just a small picture?
Now it's centered. Thank you.
This is of the National Assembly.
Okay, this photo that you see with Kurosh Talai, the gentleman with the beard, sitting in the middle, Okay, this is a combination of members, some of the members.
I think we're seeing a different photo.
Yeah, I think
The pictures are different. This is the first National Assembly you are showing right now.
Okay, okay.
The picture is first National Assembly.
Okay, all right. Okay, so do you see this picture?
now
Yeah,
we,
this is correct.
yes.
Okay. Okay, it is okay. First of all, a warning: the quality of these pictures are not really good because they're pictures from pictures from pictures. There are better quality pictures, but obviously, like putting presentations together, etc. For that purpose, they're not really that great. But that's okay. So this one actually is the late. Okay, so my mother is sitting in this in the middle. The three ladies, right? You see the three ladies.
Yeah.
My mother is sitting next to the hostess of the local assembly of Tehran, who was also arrested with the LSA of Tehran, and she was executed. And so the execution on 4th of January of 1981 or 82, when it took place, there were 7 people who were executed that day. 6 of them were members of the local assembly of Tehran, and one of them was the hostess, Mrs. Shidrokh Amirkia Baqa. I'm not going to share the pictures. Okay, so let me get out of this one. And I'm going to share a picture from my parents. This picture is a picture of my parents, and it was taken perhaps around maybe 2 or 3 years before the revolution. At the time of the abduction of my father, or abduction of the entire National Assembly of Iran, my father was 53 years old. And at the time of her execution, my mother was 52 years old. And as I mentioned before, my cousin Shiva was 36 years old when she was executed.
Mona, I think that if you can unshare and reshare so that we see the photo of your parents.
Oh, you didn't see that. Okay. Okay. Sorry, this is not it.
And by the way, it's so helpful that you are sharing these photos. I think that there are friends also on the call who are either related to or familiar with some of the people in the photos, but also it really brings home
Okay.
the impact of what you're sharing.
Sure. So is this, can you see the picture of my parents?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this is my mom and dad. And this is, as I mentioned, maybe 2 or 3 years before the revolution. And so there were, just one thing I wanted to mention is that my parents, none of the people who actually gave up their lives wanted to die, okay? And they did everything to preserve their lives, and they wanted to serve alive. But of course, when it came to that they were captured, and and they were given a choice to recant. Obviously, they were not going to recant, so they actually were killed, were executed. For your information, also, when the members of the Second National Assembly of Iran were executed, their execution was discovered accidentally. And I remember at that time, there was, I guess, the newspaper Le Monde in Paris, France. They're the ones who actually first talked about it in public. And so they were really horrible times. In fact, always the month of December is a heavy month personally for me because of the execution of my mom, and obviously also August. But when during August of 21st, 1980, when the abduction of the National Assembly of Iran took place, we still had some hope that that National Assembly would be found and that they would not be killed. But that wasn't the case with the Second National Assembly of Iran. And so Uh, what I want to share with you, there is a lot that we can share. But so what happened after the Second National Assembly of Iran was executed? A third National Assembly was, I'm going to stop sharing, sorry. A third National Assembly was elected or came to work. But this time, because of the circumstances in Iran at that time, they would be meeting 3 by 3, so they would not have quorum. And whatever they had decided to do, so it was no longer the case that the entirety of the National Assembly or administrative body would be arrested. However, the Third National Assembly of Iran, they were arrested one by one, sometimes 2 by 2, and put in prison, and all of them were also executed. So here you go. You have 3 national assemblies that were executed. And I remember in one of the letters that my mother wrote to us, we get into that a little bit later, she basically mentioned that if you're familiar with this, with Dawnbreakers and the siege with the siege that they had in Mazandaran, when they were in siege, if you recall, Tabarsi, yes, Sheikh Tabar. Thank you, sweetheart. Yes. So at Sheikh Tabarsi, oh, Mrs. Mavedat, I love you. You're here. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the siege of Sheikh Tabarsi, if you remember, called Azan Bar Furush. If you remember, the call to prayer went up, and whenever the first person who went up, with the call to prayer, he was shot down, he was killed, and then the second one it went up. Then the second one was also shot down, and the third one went up, and the third one also was shot down. And so my mother, in one of her letters to us, says that, in fact, also when she wrote to the House of Justice, saying that Azan bar furush edame darad. So that means the call to the prayer is continuing. So the First National Assembly, Second National Assembly, and Third National Assembly all cut down, very much like the call to the prayer within at the Tabarsi, Sheikh Tabarsi, in the Dawnbreakers. There are many beautiful points and that we can share, but of course there's, it's not necessarily the right time to do that. What I like to say right now is that, when Baha'is were being put to death and when they were imprisoned, they were asked to write their last will and testament. So many of the martyrs, recent martyrs, had an opportunity to write down their will and testament. And of course, these will and testaments are really historical records of the perseverance and courage and heroism of the Baha'is, recent Baha'i martyrs in Iran. And they are part of the Baha'i history. They will always remain as such. And after the Iranian government basically realized that these will and testaments are not going to be good reflection on what the Islamic Republic has done, they did not allow the Baha'is who were imprisoned and they were going to be executed. They did not allow them anymore to write their will and testament. And going back to some things that have been documented, my mother wrote extensively reported on situation of the Baha'is in Iran. She traveled quite a bit in Iran, and she sent her reports to the Baha'i World Center. And she, of course, also wrote some letters to her children, her 3 children, even though it wasn't frequent, but they became pretty historic, at least for us children. And the question of martyrdom and the word martyrdom, I don't like the word that much because it is, given the time that you're living in right now, it's really debased. The whole, the term martyrdom is debased. So what I like to read to you is is an excerpt from Dr. Amin Banani, who was an Iranologist, a professor of Iranian studies at UCLA. He passed away a few years ago. Dr. Banani translated some of the letters and reports of my mother. And at the beginning, and also these letters, couple of them that he translated are included and printed in the Baha'i, it's a World Order magazine. Let me share now, maybe this time, okay. Let me, no, actually I don't wanna share, no. Okay, do you see, okay, so this is World Order magazine, okay. This is fall of 1982. And it has a translation of the letters, 2 letters of my mom and 1 letter of Mr. Sobhani, who was also martyred. This is another World Order magazine, another issue. This is spring of 1982, and this is where the congressional hearing, you know, it's the congressional hearing that was, let's see. So this issue is dedicated to the congressional hearing in 1982, and what I read from the from Honorable Don Bunker is basically from this World Order magazine, and you know, copies of these are available. So one is fall 1982, the other one is spring of 1982, and this one is about the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran, congressional hearing, and this one is about 3 accounts of love sacrifice. I know that these magazines, at some point, they were available, and if you get a chance to get a hold of them, they do have some historical content. So I'm gonna read for you, just a second. I'm gonna read for you an excerpt from Dr. Banani, because he addresses the term martyrdom. And so this is from Dr. Amin Banani, Professor Amin Banani, when he started translating some of these letters. So he says the following. He says, what is martyrdom? The coin is debased every day by acts of mindless zeal and fanaticism and blind fanaticism. In these letters and testaments from some of the Baha'i men and women who have been put to death for their faith in Iran, we have a reaffirmation of the dignity, sanity, and humanity of that station. These are not desperate people consumed by the death wish. They are balanced individuals dedicated to the ennobling of life through a new world order. They are not superhuman beings, but ordinary men and women whose true humanity is perfected in the fires of tests and tribulations. If there is an inspiration to be gained from their experiences and their deaths, it is not of pathos and grief, but one of the affirmation of the capacity of human beings for spiritual growth. The measure of that growth is not only the eternal glory of those who have died, but also the vital promise for us who live. It is in the hope for the realization of that promise that I have made these translations. With such examples, we should have an easier time rising to our potential and attaining our goal. All these heroic men and women have ascended the ultimate heights of spiritual attainment. But we are particularly fortunate to have the letters and reports of Jinus Mahmoudi, who emerges as a woman of exceptional qualities. Her radiant spiritual growth is matched by a keen intellect, an acute sense of history, and a rare gift of expression, which I feel will enrich the annals of Baha'i history forever. She has been able to capture the full spiritual, emotional, and intellectual impact of the events through which she has lived and died. It is as if we had letters from Tahirih, Amin Banani. I'm hoping that this statement by Dr. Amin Banani in terms of martyrdom, in terms of translating these in the hope of realization of the promise of this spiritual growth for all of us and the capacity of humanity for this spiritual growth. Basically, we can talk about that because I think martyrdom, as he mentions, the coin is debased, the word is debased every day by these, fanaticism of those who kill and give their own lives up. I was going to actually share with you a couple of things, a couple of extras from my mom's letter, but I'm not going to do that unless everybody wants to hear. But I need to create a little bit more context around them. So maybe at this time, which is about 11:34 your time, let me open this up and see if there are any questions. Do you want to hear something different? Do you want to hear more? Are there any questions, comments? And I know that Mrs. Mavedat, whose husband was also martyred, she's also on this call. So please jump in, and I ask the people who put this program together to just let me know what you want me to do. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, dear Mona. I just wanted to say that there is a request that you do share from your mother's letter.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, okay. My mom wrote many letters to us, actually not many. She wanted to write more, but of course she didn't have the time to do that. But I'm gonna read some excerpts from this letter that she wrote to us. And it was translated by Mr. Amin Banani. He's a fantastic, he did such a great job because he was obviously fluent in Persian and in English. He was a professor of Persian literature and Iranologist at UCLA. I'm not going to be able to, given the short time, I'm not going to be able to give you a lot of context, but maybe it's a good idea just to share a couple of paragraphs from her letter. This was written on June of 1981. This is 6 months before she was arrested. And of course, in the midst of all the things that was going on in Iran, and her total commitment to the faith of Baha'u'llah. She talks about, okay. So she writes to us this letter after she visits the local assembly of Hamadan. The local spiritual assembly of Hamadan. Hamadan is a city in Iran, it's a major city in Iran. And so the members of the local assembly of Hamadan, 7 of them were arrested and they were put in prison. And as an auxiliary board member, Hamadan was in the jurisdiction that my mother served. So she was familiar with the members of the assembly, their families, and the community of Hamadan. So she would go and visit them in prison, even though that was really very, very risky, obviously, because she was known and they were after her. And here she goes and just goes inside the prison and sits down and talks to them. So this is right after her visits with the one of her last visits with the martyrs of Hamadan. And there were 7 members of the local assembly of Hamadan who were executed shortly after my mom's visit. And again, interesting points there. My mom talks about this mystery about the number 7. If you remember, we talk about the 7 martyrs of Tehran, 7 martyrs of here and there, and within the history of the faith of Baha'u'llah. There are so many 7, just 7 martyrs. So these were 7 martyrs of Hamadan. And so she writes to us and talks about her experience with the martyrs of Hamadan. And then she says, oh, those Hamadan friends, may I offer up my life for all of them, for every one of them, for all their heroism, sacrifice, that has set forward the cause by 200 years. How I feel insignificant before the greatness of their being. It is the fruit of their lives that has brought about such changes in the world. I and the likes of me on the outside run around doing the same things we did before. It's no feat. The heroic feats belong to them and to those whom we have not seen yet and don't even know their whereabouts, but whose existence we sense. She's referring to the 14 Baha'is who were abducted. 9 of them were members of the First National Assembly, 2 auxiliary board members, and 2 other ones that were abducted at the beginning of the revolution. And then she just goes on and talks about her own feelings. And she says, sometimes I feel that my turn will come too. And why not? It won't come only if at other times too I should be spared by his will, as I have been so far. But then I don't dwell on such thoughts. They don't fit in with my difficult and heavy schedule. When that time comes, I'll adjust myself to it. My feelings, dear children, are complete submission and total dedication. Only one thing counts, to do the work that I must do. And what pleasure is hidden in these tasks? This too I cannot really describe for you, nor can you truly comprehend it, because I too had not tasted it until now. And I only wish that he not take this pleasure away from me as long as I am alive. It is higher than kingship, greater than any gratification. You are working with Baha'u'llah, and you sense his being, and you see that it is he who gives the commands, he who chooses the paths, and who solves the difficulties, and never leaves me alone. My children, my dear children, I don't want to write you more about these matters. I only want you to know that I lack nothing. There is no sorrow, absolutely no difficulties. I am content, well, fortunate, assured, serene, full of energy, and thankful. Whatever should happen, there could be nothing better. I am sure your daddy, too, has the same feeling. Many people feel this way today. I wish that you, too, could comprehend our joys. When I am so full of contentment, then I'm afraid that my call for working, serving, and sacrifice may come to an end, and my portion be filled. My children, with your pure hearts pray that what he has given us with his bounty, he not take away with his justice. Don't you ever think that what has passed with us, or will come to pass, the grandeur and the intensity of which I sense, and its dread, was a hardship or an unbearable pressure. No, it's just the opposite. He has removed all the pressures from us. He has lightened us so much that we can soar. And right now we are prepared to endure 100 times more. Only pray that we may be worthy to endure. I love you. The desire to see you, which is an unattainable desire now, whenever it comes over me, it makes my whole being tremble. Who knows? Maybe it can happen someday. Mother. I wanted to read this for you because these are the kinds of letters that we would be receiving from my mom, and I'm sure the children of other martyrs will also be receiving these types of letters from their parents that basically allowed us to keep some sort of sanity in our lives. So on the one hand, it was personal tragedy. On the other hand, you knew that these were the examples for us. So again, these people, these sacrifices, they do not belong to the family of the martyrs. They don't belong to us. It belongs to the Baha'i world. And but the question is, they did what they wanted to do. What they did, and they wanted to live. They didn't want to die. They wanted to serve. But when the time came to give up their lives or deny their faith. They chose to give up their lives. And I also wanted to sort of put in context the readings this morning that were shared about martyrdom and shedding of blood. You know, there are two different, there are many different levels of sacrifice, right? It's a mystery, right? Sacrifice is a mystery. Baha'u'llah in that first tablet or prayer talks about from every drop of blood that was shed by his chosen ones, you know, myriad of creations were created. Those three, the first three tablets or prayers that were shared during the devotional this morning were from a compilation called Nar Vanur, Fire and Light, which was a compilation of the writings and prayers by the central figures of the Baha'i faith. For the Baha'is of Iran, they were, of course, in Persian and Arabic. Because of the special circumstances, the Universal House of Justice had put them together, and then some of them were translated into English and published in the Baha'i World Volume. I don't remember what the number is, but it's a Baha'i World Volume that covers the period from 1979 to 1983, which encompasses most of these martyrdoms. And also to mention, historically, after the execution of the Third National Assembly of Iran, the Iranian government banned Baha'i administration in Iran. And so we don't have any official Baha'i administration in Iran. Sorry, there's a lot to talk about, but please let me know if there are any questions. And I think I already have gone over my time. Sorry.
Yes, Mona, it's indeed a subject that I think people are willing to spend any amount of time you want to go over. I think that from the audience that I can see on this group, I've been asked to ask you to share to shed some light on the personal stories of these people who made this sacrifice, and if you could perhaps refer to the I don't know if there was a dream that your father had.
Okay. Right. Actually, yes. Okay. So first of all, I just read the chat. Okay. So the person who's okay, Mrs. Mavedat, whose husband was martyred, is in this meeting, and also Samira Samimi, whose father, Mr. Kamran Samimi, and I can show you the pictures again, also served and was on the Second National Assembly and served along with my mother. She's also in this meeting. And Dr. Abbasian, who was this incredible dentist, and in Iran, very, very handsome man. I remember everybody would talk about how handsome he is, Dr. Abbasian. And he was an auxiliary board member, and he was also martyred. So what happened? National Assembly, I will go back to what you said, Farinaz John, but let me, there's so many things in here. Okay, so Dr. Abbasian was an auxiliary board member with another gentleman who was an auxiliary board member. The two of them were meeting with the First National Assembly, and my mother happened to be absent in that one, and they were all taken. So there were 11 people who were abducted on 21st of August of 1981. And Mr. Kamran Samimi was executed along with my mother. Mrs. Mavedat's husband was executed. So I'm sure there are lots of people here that, but not a lot, but then quite a few people who've lost their loved ones. And you know, there was okay, I'm not gonna go into that because it's just another thing. When the 7 male members of the National Assembly of Iran, the Second National Assembly of Iran, were put on trial, only 7 men, okay, because women, my mom, who was the only woman there. I don't know if she was put on trial or not, but there was a video that came out from this trial, this so-called trial of the National Assembly of Iran, which is a historic one. And Samira, who's on this Zoom, her father was there, and let me see. Oh my God! Okay.
I can say it. I can tell it. Dr. Furuhi.
Furuhi, yes, please.
Dr. Roshani, Dr. Majzoub, Amin, your dear mom, and who else? Sirus Roshani, I told you, and then who else was?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can have we can have presentations where we actually can talk about each individual ones, members, those beloved martyrs who gave up their lives in this time period, which I think personally, I think it is, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that it would be more difficult to give up your life in 20th century. These people were all educated. They had lived their lives, they had traveled, and martyrdom was not part and parcel of their, of their train of thought. They served. They served by doing, not by giving up life. But of course, when it came to that, they all chose to give up their life. So, Faina, the question was sharing what? Sorry, can you remind me? I'm a little bit.
Actually, if the friends, I feel like we would be taking away from all the questions that people are wanting to ask. Yes. But after the program has closed, if you're willing to spend some time with the friends after the recording is ended.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then people are free to ask all the questions that they want. Okay. The question that was asked by Nushin Agahi before she had to go to another meeting was whether or not you could share about a dream that your father had, I think in his youth, and about a letter from received from Shoghi Effendi in his handwriting.
Right. Nushin, you're getting me into trouble. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The question really becomes, okay, so what is destiny, right? And so why were these people, I feel that these people were chosen to give their lives. And, but maybe there was an element of choice. What Nushin is referring to is that a letter written on behalf of beloved guardian to my father came to light. This is after the execution of my mom, and I had no idea such a letter existed. But one day it came in the mail. In fact, when it came in the mail, I had a dream that it came in the mail, and then I was basically for a few hours was just sitting down stunned, not knowing what to think, because it's one of those things that, very personal experience, but then, hey, you're having a dream, and then all of a sudden, something happens that is obviously the fulfillment of your dream. But anyway, so this letter, my father, when he was young, went very young, he goes he goes as a pioneer to a small village near Mashhad called Namab in Khorasan. And that was the time that the beloved guardian was asking the Baha'is in Iran to scatter and go pioneering. So against the wishes of his parents, my father, Hushang, actually takes off and travels to Namab, Khorasan. And when he's there, I think he's probably in his early teens, he has a dream. And he writes about the dream to the guardian and asks for interpretation of his dream. And in that letter that my father writes to the guardian, he also asks a question about a meaning of something in the Baha'u'llah's writings. I'm just assuming that that's the case because of the response of that is in that letter. So the dream that my father had in his early youth is as follows. He says that there was a competition between the youth and the beloved guardian. The competition was as follows. The beloved guardian threw his ring somewhere, and the competition was for the youth to go and find his ring. So my father actually finds the ring and then asks the guardian, what does it mean? And so the guardian writes back and says, of course, he praises my dad's, service, etc. And then he says that it is an indication of your future, that if you persevere, you will attain to the height of something, I don't remember the word, but it was an indication of sacrifice and martyrdom. So I guess that's what Nushin referred to, and I do have a copy of that in the handwriting of a secretary of the beloved guardian. There are many beautiful stories, I'm sure, personal ones that may be meaningful only to people who have experienced it. But Nushin got me into trouble to share this, for sharing this. But anyway, so that was the story. Yes.
Thank you so much. I wanted to thank you again, Mrs. Mahmoudi, for joining us today. It's really been an honor and pleasure to have you and to hear these stories firsthand. The friends who are on the line, if you wouldn't mind waiting, if you'd like to wait for the program to close, there will be a reading that Mrs. Mahmoudi wanted to share with everybody. And you can explain why you chose the selection, Mrs. Mahmoudi, and then we'll be watching a video of the writings by two young people from our area who are going to be in this video. If friends stay on, I just wanted to remind everybody that this program is on every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So that means that you can use the same link you used to connect to this link, to this video, to the Zoom meeting. You can continue to use the same one, and you can also go to the website for the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center, novabaha'icenter.org, which is posted in the chat, to find this link and also to see previous recordings. Chinichi has kindly posted it to our public chat. If you can just go into the chat, you can see it. And also this recording of this session, you can find on that website on Wednesday. Again, thank you everyone for taking the time to be here. We will now proceed with the closing devotions. Mrs. Mahmoudi, thank you again. Mrs. Mahmoudi, there was a selection you wanted to read.
Yes, okay. So so this is a very, very short prayer by Abdul Baha. And the reason this is really meaningful, it is not a common one it's not one of those prayers that appear in the Baha'i prayer book. And I didn't know it was translated into English. And the reason it's at least personally meaningful, first of all, it's very short. And second, it's a prayer that was very, my mom loved. And third, that I heard that, in prison, the Baha'is, including my mom when she was in prison, she had taught some of the other Baha'i ladies who were in the cell with her for a short period of time. She had taught them to chant this and this prayer. And I think it's a good, maybe this one, and then you can have your video, would be wonderful. So it goes as follows. It's the English translation. It says, O thou pure and omnipotent God, O thou my kind Lord, grant me such power as to enable me to withstand the onslaught of the peoples and kindreds of the world, and give me such might as to cause the waves of my endeavors, like unto the Pacific Ocean, to reach the shores of both East and the West. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, Mona Jun.
قربونتون برم من مهری جون.
میست میکنم خیلی من. Have a good day. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we will have a video devotional, and then we will have a time for more questions and answers.
Make haste to love, make haste to trust, make haste to give, to guidance come. Make haste to love, make haste to trust, make haste to give, to guidance come. Come ye for harmony, to behold the star of day. Come ye for kindliness, for ease. Come here for amity and peace. Come and let down your weapons of wrath till unity is one. Come and in the Lord's true path, each one help each one. Make haste to love, make haste to trust, make haste to give, to guidance come. Make haste to love, make haste to trust, make haste to give, to guidance come. Come ye for harmony, to behold the star of day. Come ye for kindliness, for ease. Come here for amity and peace. Come and let down your weapons of wrath till unity is one. Come and in the Lord's true path, each one help each one. Oh, the compassionate Lord. Oh, thou the compassionate Lord. Bestow upon me a heart, bestow upon me a heart, which like unto a glass may be illumined by the light of thy love, may be illumined by the light of thy love, may be illumined by the light of thy love, and confer upon me thoughts which may change this world into a rose garden, through the outpourings of heavenly grace, through the outpourings of heavenly grace, through the outpourings of heavenly grace. Bestow upon me a heart, bestow upon me a heart, which like unto a glass may be illumined by the light of thy love, may be illumined by the light of thy love, may be illumined by the light of thy love, and confer upon me thoughts which may change this world into a rose garden, through the outpourings of heavenly grace, through the outpourings of heavenly grace, through the outpourings of heavenly grace.
Uh,